I had a conversation with a colleague some years ago where they were describing to me an idea they had for an organization that would help women coming out of prison. Years later, when I'd left corporate, I spoke to this ex-colleague and I said, "What happened to that idea?" They looked at me blankly, could not remember it. I remembered the dream more than they had. And it wasn't because they lacked motivation. It was just because life had gotten in the way, life had happened, and work had happened. Responsibilities had come up, and so the dream had just slowly faded away. Then I had a second conversation. This was a lot earlier. This was with a group of colleagues where we were talking about our skills, and some people had ideas of wanting to move on or leave the organization. And I asked the question, if you left tomorrow, what would you do? And there was silence. There were blank stares, because even though we were really good at what we did, it felt like our skills were so niche that it felt as if we couldn't work anywhere else other than the organization that we were already in. And that really bothered me, because I couldn't understand how we could be there for 5, 10, 15. Some colleagues had been there for over 20 years, but still felt trapped in an organization where they were really highly skilled at what they did, but couldn't work anywhere else. And that's I realized that corporate will teach us a lot of things, but it will never teach us about freedom. In fact, if you use the word freedom in corporate, you could be seen as irresponsible. And so what people do, they do what I did for over 20 years. I worked hard. I got the promotions. You take annual leave whenever you can, and you plod along until you reach a retirement date. And that isn't a bad life if that's the life that you want. But if you have any thoughts that you could do something else, it's not going to sit right with you, which is why it didn't sit right with me when I was doing what I needed to do, going through the motions, climbing the ladder, working hard. And then the announcement came that retirement age was going to be 67. I actually remember when somebody announced in the office that retirement age was now 67. And as you can imagine, that sparked a huge conversation with people saying it's out of order. How could they do this? Do they want us to, topple over at our desks? What I do remember is how I felt. And in that moment, I knew that this was not going to be my life. And it really hit home that with all the things that corporate continues to teach, it would never teach you how to create options for yourself. And so when I think back to those conversations, it really hits home for me how easy it is to get comfortable in a life that no longer fits. It's so easy to stop imagining possibilities, and really easy to put your dreams on hold until you forget what they even were. I always talk about, putting your dreams and your goals and ideas on the back burner, and you put it on the back burner and forget about it. And a lot of the times it doesn't burn. It just fizzles out. The gas will go out and you can't even remember what your dreams were anymore. When I started my career, there were some things that I believed were true. I believed in job security, and they told you that particular jobs held particular securities. However, as the years went by, jobs changed, governments change, leadership changes, organizations restructure, and you realize that there is no such thing as security when you have one income. Security comes from having options. But many people feel that, you don't have to do it now, you can do it later. But later is never guaranteed. I've watched people for years, even now with the clients that I work with, who have postponed dreams for years because they were waiting for the ideal time. That ideal moment, that perfect moment never comes. And at one point, when I thought about freedom, I thought it just meant quitting, because that's what a lot of people felt. But when I started looking at my skills, when I started at looking how to leverage it, how to package it, what would I do outside, and looking at my options, I realized that freedom wasn't just quitting. Freedom was about choice. Freedom became knowing that the skills you had were valuable, not just in your 9 to 5, that you had worth outside of it. What I also came to understand about freedom, which was really important, is that it was about building something, and this is linked to options, but building something substantial before you actually need it, because then that helps you make choices from a place of clarity rather than fear and desperation. And so when I look at my life today, and compare it to where I was having those conversations with my colleagues about not being able to do things outside of the job, not even remembering what dreams they had. It's polar opposites. I'm able to split my time between the UK and the Caribbean. I'm able to come out here and support my parents whenever I want to without having to negotiate annual leave. I'm able to spend the time I want with my children. I'm able to work with clients around the world without being told, no, you cannot work remotely. I'm able to decide how I work, when I work, who I work with. I manage my own time, and that's freedom. It doesn't mean it's always easy, though. It comes with its own challenges. There are uncertainties at times, there's responsibilities that come with it. Everything has a struggle. You just have to pick which struggle you want. The difference is that you get to be in charge of your destiny. The decisions I make are all mine, and that is freedom. So when I'm out in the Caribbean and you see pictures of the beaches, that isn't necessarily freedom. It's about having options so that when you make decisions, fear isn't the one in the driving seat. And this is the reason why I do what I do today, to help other professionals find that level of freedom where you aren't tied to a corporate job, skilled to the hilt, but not able to do anything outside of it. Because you already have the knowledge, you have the experience, you have the skills. The question is, will you take the time to look at how you can leverage those to create your definition of freedom? Because the truth is, you don't need more confidence. You don't need more motivation. I sat around thinking I needed to have the strength to leave. Maybe I wasn't motivated enough, and it wasn't. It was when I started looking at what my skills are, how I leverage them, who can they help, how can I package it, how do I create income streams outside of my 9 to 5? That's when I realized what freedom was. It was not being tied to that one salary. Understanding the strategy of how to leverage your skills outside of your 9 to 5, which is what corporate aren't going to teach you. Obviously, they won't. They want you there. You need to be there as a cog in the wheel. But when you understand that, you create options. And when you create options, you create freedom. So if you want to find out how to leverage your skills so that you can generate alternative income, so you too can create options so that you're not stuck and tethered to your 9 to 5, have a look at the video series that I'll link to this video. You have the knowledge, the experience, and the skills. It is time to own your wings. I'll see you in the next video.